Have you ever wondered why destructive reactions seem to take place more often than reasonable or rational discussions? The topic really finds its way into Acts chapter 18. In fact, that subject actually is something that you can see prior to that in the book of Acts. Previously, we talked about Acts chapter 17. I'd like to talk about Acts chapter 18 for the few moments we have together. It begins this way. After these things, Paul departed from Athens and went to Corinth. And he found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had commanded all the Jews to depart from Rome, and he came to them. Aquila and Priscilla. Actually, in Greek, it's Aquila in Priscilla. It's very close to what it is in English. But the edict that actually took place from Claudius was something that took place in AD 49. And later in this chapter, there's a date that can be taken out of this chapter as one of the primary dates upon which the dating of Paul's missionary journeys actually rests. But here's a statement if we continue in verse number 3. Because he, Paul, was of the same trade, he stayed with them and worked, for by occupation they were tent makers. He reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded both Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy had come from Macedonia, Paul was compelled by the Spirit and testified to the Jews that Jesus is the Christ. That creates some problems. When they opposed him and blasphemed, he shook his garments and said to them, "Your blood be upon your own heads. I am clean, and from now on I go to the Gentiles." He departed from there and entered the house of a certain man named Justus, when he worshipped God, whose house was next door to the synagogue. Then Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed on the Lord with all of his household, and many of the Corinthians, hearing, believed and were baptized. Interesting turn of events. So in verse number 3, the occupation that Paul had, he was trained as a Pharisee, but by vocation he was a tent maker. Verse number 5, compelled, the word that's used in the New King James, deals with the concept of being absorbed by this particular task at hand, of sharing that message of Jesus with as many as he possibly can. In the opposition, verse number 6 carries with it the idea of almost a substantially organized revolt, opposition, obstruction against what Paul is saying. So much so that the statement is made that there is a slander involved, the word blaspheme. They're not concerned about any kind of details. They're not concerned about any kind of intellectual or rational discussion. They just want the message stopped. And we've seen that before. So far it hasn't turned violent. It's been violent in other places. It was violent in more than one location in the country of Greece in Acts chapter 17. Once again, you have destructive reaction instead of the rational discussion. Why is that the case? If we continue on in Acts chapter 18, the statement is made in verse number 11. He continued there a year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. He's right beside the synagogue, and he's there for a year and a half. When Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews with one accord rose up against Paul and brought him to the judgment seat. So that opposition raises its ugly head once more. Not from the standpoint of a rational discussion. There's no intellectual conversation going on at all, but they're taking it to the next level. Paul is there for a year and a half, and they don't like it, and ultimately they bring him before the judgment seat of the one who is in charge of the city. And the statement that's made when Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, and it can be dated from documents outside of the New Testament to AD 51 or 52, and that's a benchmark date for going back and looking for what happened prior to this in the work of the Apostle Paul, and then dating things after this. Significant date. But when they bring him before the judgment seat of Gallio, they say, "This fellow persuades men to worship God contrary to the law." Verse 14, verse 15. When Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to the Jews, If it were a matter of wrongdoing or wicked crimes, O Jews, there would be reason why I should bear with you, why I should listen. But if it is a question of words and names in your own law, look to it yourselves, for I do not want to be a judge of such matters. There's a rational response. Instead of actually being so concerned about trying to silence this individual, why don't you carry on a discussion with him and prove that he's wrong? If you can't prove that he's wrong, why don't you accept that he might be right? The statement of Gallio makes perfect sense. It's a reasoned response. Verse 16, there seems to be a hesitation on the part of those accusers, kind of an obstinance about them. Because it doesn't say that they leave. It says that Gallio drove them from the judgment seat. It brings up an interesting point at the very next verse. Then all the Greeks took Sosthenes, the ruler of the synagogue, and beat him before the judgment seat, but Gallio took no notice of these things. Some translations, including the New International Version, some others, don't say the Greeks. It says they all the people there. And the reason for that is in different manuscripts, it uses a word that carries with it that Hellenistic kind of a point of view, that these were Greeks. Some others don't do that. They would indicate that it's more than just those that are Greek by birth. It may be Hellenistic Jews as well. In fact, in his commentary, in exegetical commentary on the book of Acts, Darrell Bach makes an interesting statement in connection with verse number 16 and following. Verse 16, Gallio dismisses the accusers from the court, driving them out of the tribunal. This is an issue the Jews and the Christians must settle for themselves. Verse 17, some take matters into their own hands, however, seizing Sosthenes and beating him in front of the tribunal. Who is involved is not clear. This is vigilantism, about which Gallio cares nothing and does nothing. This is not a flattering picture of Roman rule. So is it the case that these are the individuals that are keeping order in that judgment seat? Those are the soldiers beside the individual that is in charge of the government of this area of Greece? Are they the ones that actually beat the individual that is the leader of the synagogue named Sosthenes because his people won't leave? Or Sosthenes, an individual that's actually bringing the accusations against Paul? And if that's the case, are the Jews that are accusing Paul actually turning on Sosthenes because he didn't do a very good job? No matter which way it is, no matter who's involved in that violence, it's still something that's not justified either way you look at it. The statement's made in verse number 18. Paul still remained a good while, and then he took his leave of the brethren and he sails to Syria. The statement that's made in verse 17 about this violence. Violence is often something that occurs when there is a statement that is made in a discussion that somebody cannot answer, cannot really debate the issue and win. So what do? You resort to violence. In a paper that was published by the University of Pennsylvania in their psychology department, this comes from 2017. It's a reference back to a study that was done and research that's still noted that took place in 1970 by Albert Bandura. But in commenting on this particular theorem, this particular hypothesis that was carried out under Bandura's guidance, heightened levels of exposure to violence trigger it to spread at an increasing rate throughout the world. Evidently, the most effective way to diminish or slow down spread of violence and terrorism is to get rid of cruel and unnecessary news stories, as well as limit exposure to violence. Who would have thought that would be the case? Common sense, actually, something you find in this article. Albert Bandura's observational theory of 1970 constitutes that violent behavior is learned through imitating observed behaviors that we notice in our surrounding environment. Bandura connected our brain activity to instinctual responses to observed actions that surround us. Modeling threatening behavior typically results from high exposure rates to the media. Likewise, mimicking such behavior causes amplified levels of aggression and rage, which may impair an individual's ability to plan and to execute actions appropriately. Again, you'd think such would be common sense. So what's involved in this particular study? This paper from the University of Pennsylvania actually references not just Albert Bandura, but some study that was done by Italian researchers in 1990. They also pull some quotes from an article titled "Why Violence is So Contagious" that appeared in the Washington Post, December the 15th, 2015. Modeling threatening behavior typically results from high exposure rates to the media. Isn't that interesting? What have we seen in recent days? Have we seen a call for rational discussion over destructive reaction, where rationality and intelligence gives way to unintelligent, violent behavior? Paul had to face that on numerous occasions. Violence. People didn't like what he was saying and would follow him from one city to another. If they find out where he is, we'll start problems for him in the new place where he resides. We don't want people listening to the message. If the message is false, why would that be the case? Wouldn't it be better just to expose what is erroneous and let your intellectual argumentation show the defectiveness of what Paul is saying? Why are they violent? They can't answer what Paul suggests. The way that he argues for Jesus being the fulfillment of those messianic prophecies in the Old Testament, they have no comeback for that kind of response. When you see people today in various kind of situations not discussing in an intellectual way various points of view, but actually turning violent with things to which they disagree, it's not a mark of intelligence, just the opposite. It seems more and more we are living in an unintelligent culture and society, despite what the academics and higher education would have us believe. Acts chapter 18, interesting chapter. Interesting response by the proconsul of Achaia, who thankfully is thinking clearly. But it's totally different from that political figure in Acts 18 and what we find in a lot of politics today. It's amazing how God's Word actually is a mirror that shows the flaws in the culture of any and all generations, from the first century till today. Please stay safe. We'll talk again soon.